من أرجوه لكل خير وآمنوا سخطه عند كل شر. يا من يؤتي الكثير بالقليل، يا من يؤتي من سأل، يا من يؤتي من لم يسأله ومن لم يعرف، تحننا منه ورحمة. آتني بمسألتي إياك جميع خير الدنيا وجميع خير الآخرة، واصرف عني بمسألتي إياك جميع شر الدنيا وشر الآخرة، فإنه غير منقوص ما أعطيت، وزدنا من فضلك يا كريم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام، يا ذا النعماء والجود، يا ذا المن والتول، حرم شيبتي على النار. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام: وإن أعظم حجتهم لعلى أنفسهم يرتضعون أما قد فطمت ويحبون بدعة قد أميتت. صلوات على محمد وآل Muhammad. This is the continuation of khutbah number 22nd. Last week we had discussed the first part of it, which primarily dealt with the killing of the third caliph. If you can just go back and recap this. The sermon, which, as its title suggests, refers to the breach of allegiance by Talha and Zubair, and then to the events and the battle of Jamal that took place. Also talks about the issue of Uthman, which of course became the pretext of these warmongers to go ahead and instigate this ill-fated battle. And of course, which took lives of many, many Muslims. And of course, an excuse for the fire starters of Sham, which had, of course, a further agenda behind it, which meets the eyes. And therefore, Imam ﷺ relayed this khutbah talking about it. We mentioned in the last week's discussion that in khutbahs number 10, 26, and 172, there's a lot of similarity with this khutbah, and there's the possibility that they all were one single khutbah, which Syed Rizvi then divided into 3 different parts. Last week we talked about these first initial discussions on this khutbah, where Imam reminded them, brought out the points of how Shaitan has mobilized his followers, referring to Talha and Zubair, and of course using the false pretext of Uthman's wafat and blaming it on Imam Ali, and using that to be the pretext of the war that they exploited. Imam rightfully said to them, by God, they have not found any wrongdoing in me. There's nothing they can prove about it. Not that prove that there's nothing exists. There's no fire, there's no smoke. None of that exists. It doesn't go against me at all. But nonetheless, this is what they have done and been able to manipulate the events that will go against me. But of course, they have nothing. وَإِنَّهُمْ لَيَطْلُبُونَ حَقًّا. They're trying to demand a right from me that they have themselves abandoned and seek vengeance for a blood that they themselves have shed. They're trying to blame the blood of Uthman on me. They're the ones who have shed that blood. And all fingers point to them. Prior to his killing, the revolt against him. Prior to his killing, how they were thirsty of his blood. Prior to his killing, how they were against his policies. Prior to his killing, they were the ones who called him to be na'afal, a derogatory word used for someone who's Yahudi. And so they called him all these things. All the fingers point in their direction, yet once he's now dead, and people rush to my house to make me to be their Khalifa unanimously, they're now after it. There were certain other things which are in between the lines that people didn't see, yet affected who? Talha, Zubair, and other, quote unquote, the Muslim leadership of that time. They had their own personal agendas, which didn't meet once I came into power. They were long-standing friends of mine. They've enjoyed a relationship with me. They were thinking, Ali is our friend. And once he becomes the ruler of the Ummah, then of course we will get to enjoy the amarat of different places. We'll get to enjoy the leadership and the rulership of different places. Yet that didn't happen. So Imam uses some analogies to talk about this. Of course, last week this was all discussed, so I'm just repeating all of this. Not that there isn't anything to say for today. There's so much to say for today. I just went into the details of the last week, as many of you were not here. Then Imam comes to, after all of that, mentioning that if it was me, if my hand was in it, hypothetically speaking, if I was their partner in shedding this blood, then they too also share in it. The least is, if you include me, you are also part of it. Okay, hypothetically speaking, I'll walk along with you. You think I did it? You are also part of it, right? And then, if they alone committed this act without me, of course, then the responsibility rests solely onto them. After that, Imam said what? Imam then says, وَإِنَّ أَعْظَمَ حُجَّتِهِمْ لَعَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ. Their most important argument is against themselves. And whatever they say applies primarily to them. Then the unveiling their true motives. This is what Imam is doing right here, unveiling. He states that the real issue is elsewhere. It's not here. Uthman's healing, all that. That's not the real issue. That's not what is being shown. Today, you look at the same thing. What you see in the media, what you see is being proposed and presented and portrayed is rarely the truth or half-truth. There's something else really behind it. And therefore, Imam al-Islam saying the same thing. They wished for the conditions of Uthman's time to continue. They were enjoying lofty maqamat and places and ranks in his time. Some of them were. And so they wanted those privileges to be granted to them. They were enjoying a lot of, benefits from the public treasury, Baitul Mal. They wanted that to continue. However, that era has passed and will not return as long as I am in power. Because Ali is not afraid of anyone. Ali is not afraid of these false relationships, friendships that you claim of, that I will scratch your back, you'll scratch mine. This will not happen. Imam uses this analogy. Read this. يَرْتَضِعُونَ أُمًّا قَدْ فَتَمَتْ. They are suckling from a mother who is already dry. Now, this is a phenomenon that comes a time when a mother is no longer able to feed the baby. After childbirth, nurses the child, but after a while, she's no longer able to nurse. Imam uses this analogy in this scenario over here. He said they want to nurse from a mother whose milk has dried up and revive a bid'ah, innovation that has long been dead. In the interpretation of this sentence, Shurrah, the commentators, have gone to length and extent. Sharh ibn Abil Hadid, Ibn Maytham, and the one that I use by Nasr Makarim Shirazi, they have given so many. Of course, these are the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He's Hakim and Hakim himself. So it requires, what Imam means over here could be many things. We're just going to go ahead and speculate with our limited knowledge about it. Mother whose milk has dried up refers to the pre-Islamic customs, innovations, prejudices that existed before Islam, where people resorted to unethical means to gain power or support a particular group. That's what happened. Imam in this statement emphasizes the era has passed. That era is long gone, because now I'm in office. Some also have said this, the intent is to revive the memory of Uthman's rule. That what happened in the time of the third Khalifa, that era has passed. That mother's milk has dried up. You cannot drink from it anymore. That is no longer available. Pretext of avenging his blood, even though those very claimants of vengeance were among those who rose against Uthman and contributed to his killing. In this way, they wish to nurse again from the mother whose milk has dried up. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. So, of course, it is possible to reconcile all these interpretations that are given, and I only mentioned two for you. Others have been mentioned as well, but for the brevity of time, and we don't really need to get into the linguistics of all of this. We just need to highlight and hint what Imam would be referring to. These are the two things. One, the practices of the Zamana Jahiliyyah that were still lingering on in the rule of the first three caliphs. There were many cultural things that were continuing from the ignorant, although Rasulullah had revived and Rasulullah had cleansed them, but they reverted back to many of the pre-Islamic cultures. You know how sometimes you and I have also some cultures that are associated only to, the Shias of subcontinent. The Shias of other places have no idea about it. Only in Indian and Pakistani communities you'll find certain practices which are culturally inspired by Hindus, because we lived in that place. You won't find those cultural things elsewhere in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, other places. You won't find East Africa. You won't find it there. It's only part of our. Now you see some of those things, even though so much awareness has been created that these things are not. But because culturally speaking, those things continue. Again, rule of thumb is what? Sometimes people think that I'm harsh about it. No, rule of thumb is, as long as those things are not going against the tenets of the religion, that's okay. The moment they start threatening any wajib and lead you towards any haram, this is where you draw a line. So anyway, coming back to this. So this could be those practices of the past, or this could be referring to, what happened in the time of Uthman. The second interpretation is actually better, because Imam may not be referring to what happened in the past, in the time of Jahiliyyah. That has been a long time now. 35 years have passed. Now, this could be probably, most likely, what just recently took place in the last 8 to 10 years in the rule of Uthman, all the discrepancies that happened, all the public favors that were given, public treasury which was looted, favoritism that happened, nepotism that happened. Imam might be referring to those. Imam continues this sentence by saying, Ya khaybat ad-da'i man da'a wa il'am ajibta. Oh despair, come to this caller. Truly, who is calling? And what invitation are the ignorant people responded to? This expression, in fact, is Imam's prediction of the outcome of Battle of Jamal. He's ahead of time predicting what will happen. One of the prophecies, one of the things of ilm-e-ghaib, Imam ﷺ is mentioning. The Imam declares their ultimate fate to be what? Despair and defeat. They will get nothing out of all of this revolt, all of this, revolution that they want to call it against me. They'll get nothing out of it besides what? Mayusi, despair, and eventually they'll be defeated by my hands. This will happen. Mark my words. Write it down right now. Jamal hasn't happened yet, but Imam is predicting this will happen in Jamal. The fate of opportunists who were themselves among the instigators then rose in the name of avenging Uthman's blood, creating division amongst the Muslims, a group of blind followers. The leaders, I understand, they have motives, but now they have a grand following by these blind followers. Without insight, without understanding, followed them, thereby entangling themselves in loss and disgrace both in this world and the hereafter. Because you're not standing up against another ordinary individual. You're standing up against Hujjat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet you don't realize. The Imam continues his sentence by saying, وَإِنِّي لَرَاضٍ بِحُجَّةِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَعِلْمِهِ فِيهِمْ. I'm satisfied with the divine proof and his knowledge about this group, and the judge between me and them is none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, it is possible the reference to the divine proof, Hujjat-e-Ilahi or Bihujjat-illah, is the command of the Quran regarding the rebels, transgressors, as it mentioned in Quran in Surah Hujurat, ayat number 9, وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمْ. If there are two groups of Muslims fight, then do what? Number one, do islah. First, you resort to reform. You don't right away start, fighting them. You resort to reform. Sit down with them, talk to them, try to reason with them, reform. فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا فَإِن بَغَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا. But after these efforts of reform and islah and reconciliation fail, and one of them do baghawat, they become rebels, they stand up, they start, causing fitna and fasad, عَلَى الْأُخْرَى فَقَاتِلُوا. Then you all put your resources in fighting that group, التي تبغي حتى تفي الأمر. Fight that transgressors group until it returns to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here, Imam is saying the same thing. There are two groups that are rising up. One are with me, one are with them. First and foremost, let's do islah. Let's try and reconcile. But if that doesn't work, then of course, you are baghi, not me. So we will wage war and we will respond to it. The phrase ilmihi fihim, his knowledge about them, may refer to the well-known hadith of Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where Prophet has said that regarding Imam Ali, that he will fight the nakithin, the qasitin, the mariqin. There's a hadith attributed to Rasulullah. Rasulullah had already predicted it, that, O Ali, you will fight three groups of people. When Salma asked about these three groups, the Prophet explained, the nakithin are the pledge breakers of Jamal, the qasitin are the army of Sham, and the mariqin are the people of Nahrawan. Rasulullah spoke to Salma and already predicted that Ali will face these three. So it is clear that someone who is pleased with the will of Allah, fully aware of the future of such painful events, and confident in the defeat and despair of the enemies, will find their souls filled with contentment, satisfaction, and tranquility. And the last part of it, this is where the title, you might be wondering, the bravery of Imam Ali. So why did I title that? This is where the bravery of Imam comes about. At-tahdeed bil-harb. It says, you threaten me to fight? Have you forgotten who I am? This is where Imam explains to them, have you lost your mind? You know who you're standing in front of? Imam is not bagging and boasting about someone who's son of, Abu Talib or son-in-law of Rasulullah. He's not bragging about that. He's not, boasting about those things. He is reminding and refreshing their memories about what he has done in the earlier days of Islam in the battles. You forgot what I did in Badr? You forgot my heroics in Uhud? You forgot what I did in Hunayn? You forgot what I did in Khaybar? You forgot what I did in Khandaq? And you have the guts to stand up against me? At-tahdeedu bil-harb? You are challenging me to fight? Have you forgotten who you're talking to? Imam, in fact, in one of the letters which we will come to, when he writes to Muawiyah, he said, as-sayf, the sword that I have, that I use to kill the leaders of Quraysh, la astabdilu bis-sayf. I have not changed that sayf, that sword, with another sayf. I am still carrying the same one. Blood of the Quraysh is still on that sword of mine. I'm still carrying it. That should be enough to threaten you. So Imam said, فَإِنْ أَبَوْا آتَيْتُهُمْ حَدَّ السَّيْفِ وَكَفَى بِهِ شَافِيًا مِنَ الْبَاطِلِ. Again, it's beyond my ability to explain these words, but of course using the tafsir and the tashrih of the scholars, Imam states, if they refuse to accept the truth, I will grant them the sharp edge of the sword. This is a way of saying, if you refuse to reconcile, you know what you're going to get? The sharp end of my sword. That's what your fate will be. The very sword that is best remedy against falsehood in the face of tyrants who do not recognize reason, and the ally and supporter of truth, وَكَفَى بِهِ شَافِيًا, against the oppressive despots, and al-batil وَنَاصِرًا لِلْحَقِّ, and it is Nasir, Nusrat karne wali, jo haq ki taraf le jaye. This statement of Rasulullah held the Quran in one hand and the sword in the other hand, in an expression of an undeniable reality of the divinely guidance governance. That the governance is what? That you have Quran in one hand, which is there to do what? Which is there to provide code of conduct, which is there to guide you with the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you have what on the other hand? You always keep that sword in your other hand. Because not always reasoning will work with many of these people. And if that doesn't work, you've exhausted all the efforts with Quran, then talwar and sword and saif will be needed. Such governments must first and foremost turn to reason, to work to reform the culture of the corrupt societies. That's the first thing. You reason with them. Use Quran to reason with them. They must strive as far as they can. Imam is saying, I've done all of that. Don't think that I lifted my sword that very first moment that I got. No. I'm a warmonger. No. I use reason with these people. They must strive to guide the wrongdoers out of the errors through advice, admonition, clear rational arguments. However, it is evident there will always be a group of people, no matter how much you try to reason with them, use intellect, they will be veiled of the curtains of selfishness and desire, who understand nothing except the language of what? Sword. Sirf or sirf talwar ki zaban jante hain, nothing else. So the leaders of the divinely guided governments resort to force when dealing with such individuals. Imam continues his statement by saying, وَمِنَ الْعَجَبِ بَعَثُهُمْ إِلَيَّ أَنْ أَبْرُزَ لِلطَّعَانِ. He says, it is astonishing that they have declared war against me and have summoned me to face their spears and endure their swords. This despite the fact that they are well aware of my position in the Islamic battles, and they have witnessed my prowess, how I stood firm against the most powerful warriors among the enemies of Islam. In any case, this threat demonstrates the extent to which the instigators of Jamal were disconnected from reality. Now, at one point, your conviction, your motivation is for the rightful reasons. You want to fight for the true religion of Islam. You say, we can care less who's standing in front of us. We have the maqam of shahadat. Ihdal Husnain, as the ayat of Quran that I'll quote. That you'll get one of the two beauties. Either you'll get victory, or you'll get martyrdom. What could be better than that? But that is when your motive is honorable. When your motive is for the right reasons, not here where you're instigating in order to gain some political gains and power. So Imam said these people are disconnected from reality. Their obsession with attaining power has blinded them that they ignored a clear truth. What was that clear truth? The courage and the combat prowess of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Imam continued his statement, follows the same point with a clear saying. What does he say? He said, وَأَنْ أَصْبِرَ لِلْجِلَادِ حَبِلَتْهُمْ الْهُبُولِ حَبِلَتْهُمْ الْهُبُولِ لَقَدْ كُنْتُ وَمَا أُحَدَّدُ بِالْحَرْبِ وَلَا أُرْهَبُ بِالضَّرْبِ وَإِنِّي لَعَلَى يَقِينٍ مِّنْ رَبِّي وَغَيْرِ شُبْهَةٍ مِّنْ دِينِي. Let their mothers mourn in their grief. This sentence you've heard a lot. Even Imam Hussein, when Hur held the reins of the horse, what did he say? Taqalat ummuki. That may your mother sit in your grief. To which, of course, Hur paid respects. He said, if your mother was not Fatima Zahra, I would have said the same thing to you. But your mother is Khatun Jannat. So Imam said, let their mothers sit in their grief. Wow, what is it? This is an analogy, basically, saying that I know what will happen to you. Your mothers will sit in your grief. They'll be weeping over you. They'll be crying over you. Although you're on the wrong path, but the mothers will still weep for you because she gave birth to you. I'm not the one to be threatened with battle or frightened with swords or spears. For I have faith and certainty in my Lord. I have not the slightest doubt or hesitation in my religion and my creed. Imam alludes to the fact that the fear of war, only, if they fear death or martyrdom. I don't fear death. He says, Inni anisu bil maut. My love for death is more than in an infant's love for the chest of his mother. This is one of the analogies that Imam uses in another place. My love for death is superior than an infant's love for the chest of the mother. How infant is always clinging on to it. He said, only if they lack confirmed certainty in their Lord and are plagued by doubts and hesitation about the path they are following. For one who has faith in their path and possesses unwavering certainty and belief knows that in a battle against the enemies of truth, there is no true defeat. No true defeat. Why? Rather, it is either victory over the enemy or it is shahadat. It's martyrdom. As the ayat number 52 of Surah Tawbah says, the concept is ihdal husnayayn. The one of the two good outcomes. What is the third outcome? There's only two outcomes. Either I'll defeat you and be victorious, or I'll be shaheed. Say, do you what you want, except one of the two outcomes will come. And Imam is also, when he says towards the end, وَإِنِّي لَعَلَى يَقِينٍ مِّن رَبِّي, that I am at the, sometimes people say, are you sure? People ask you this question, are you sure? Are you 100%? Imam is saying, if anyone has doubt about my conviction and my yaqeen, he says, إِنِّي لَعَلَى يَقِينٍ مِّن رَبِّي. He said, I enjoy full certainty of belief from my Rabb. Because this is the same Ali who had said at another place, لَوْ كُشِفَ الْغِطَاء مَزْدَدْتُ يَقِينًا. If all the veils are lifted, it will not increase one bit in the yaqeen and the certainty of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. And then the last sentence, وَغَيْرِ شُبْهَةٍ مِّن دِينِي, points to the entirety of religion and divine responsibilities, which have illuminated the path of life for him and eliminated every form of doubt and hesitation. And further, Imam has heard from the Prophet who has said that he would confront Naqithin, and he will confront Qasitin, and he will confront Mariqin, and he only sees something like this is actually taking place right in front of his eyes. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Allahumma salli. Yes. Hmm.